So we discussed enums till now, and now we are starting something called as anonymous types. So what is an anonymous type? A anonymous type is a predefined type which can assume any type of data, or which can assume the data type after or later it gets declared. Okay, for example, think that you are doing some operation and you don't know what type of value would be returned by that operation. Okay, then in that case, what will you do? You will create a anonymous type variable, and this anonymous type variable can assume any type, or it can take any it can take data of any type, and it can assume the type based on the value which is being passed to it. Making sense? Good. For example, the first and foremost one is your var. Okay, var is an anonymous type. For example, I have declared var I. Fine. And I can specify I equal to 100. So here, what value is it taking? Console dot right line of I dot fine, get I dot get type will not work here. Yes, fine, no problem. I'll display I. Okay, so it takes a numeric value here. Fine. Okay, it should be initialized when it is getting created. Fine. So let me see if get type. Good. So get type. Fine. What will it take? What type? What is the type? Int 32, which is the framework specific type, and associated C# type is int. And now let me assign true to it. Okay, and we'll see what type it has assumed. Boolean. And if I assign string to it, okay, what type is it assuming? String. Understood? So basically, the type of your anonymous type will be assumed based on the value which is being passed to it. Making sense? And you need not assign any specific type, and it can take any value, and based on the type of the value, it assumes the type of the variable. Okay, and again, there is one other type of anonymous type called as dynamic. Okay, which can be used again. It is also a anonymous type. Fine. It assumes the value, the type of it based on value being passed. Fine. Excellent question. So why do we require two different anonymous types which does the same purpose? Why do we require it? Okay, please note down answers for this question when we are discussing today, and send that as an assignment to me. Okay, I expect everyone to give the differences between dynamic and var as an assignment by tomorrow. Okay, or by next class for that matter. Making sense? Good. So I'll show you the difference between them. So var is a statically typed anonymous type. What is that? It's a statically typed anonymous type, and dynamic is dynamically typed. What does that mean? For example, let me create two different anonymous type variables called as I and j. Fine. I have declared both of them like this. Here I takes boolean value and j takes integer value. Now let me assign some other value to my j. Okay, some other type of value to my j. I'm assigning a string type to it. So is it throwing a error? What error is it throwing? It says you cannot convert string to int, right? Good. Let's do the same thing with here dynamic type, anonymous type. Is it throwing error? No. What does that mean? J assumes the type statically with the first initialization of your where type anonymous type. Its type gets created, or type gets assigned to the var typed anonymous type, and it cannot be changed. However, coming to the dynamic typed anonymous type, it is dynamically typed, so which means you can change the type being assumed by it later to its declaration also. Fine, which means you can go ahead and change it any number of times. However, the type will be assumed based on the final declaration. Fine, now it should say assume string, right? Got it? Good. Now what is the first difference? Var is statically typed and dynamic is dynamically typed. And the second difference is if I var is a integer type, right? So let us make it a string type so that you can see many predefined things associated with it. So if I do j dot, okay, is it showing all the predefined functions associated with a string, like starts with or ends with, fine, or anything like that? Is it showing that? Good. However, if we do the same with your dynamically typed anonymous type, is it showing anything? No. Why so? IntelliSense doesn't work with dynamically typed anonymous type. Fine. IntelliSense will not work with dynamically typed anonymous type. So what are the differences between statically typed and dynamically typed anonymous types? Sorry, var and dynamic. Var is statically typed and dynamic is dynamically typed. Fine. And the other thing, IntelliSense works with your var, and IntelliSense doesn't work with your dynamic. Why so? Why will it not work? Any idea? Because the type of it is assumed during the runtime. Fine. Understood? The type is known only during the execution time. That's the reason why it can't get the IntelliSense. And let me show you one other difference. Let's just declare the var type and run the code. Fine. Is it throwing a error? What does it say? It needs to be initialized. While declaring itself, you should initialize it, provide the initial value. Okay. However, let's do the same thing with your dynamic. Fine. Is it throwing, or is it doing something? No. It means here statically typed anonymous type requires a initialization. However, here dynamically typed anonymous type doesn't need a initialization. Making sense? What are the differences? And as the type is assumed only during the runtime, the compilation errors cannot be caught with dynamic typed anonymous type. However, they can be caught using your statically typed anonymous types. Making sense? Is it clear? Any questions? Any questions? Anyone? Good. What else did we leave? I'm thinking if we are left with anything. Fine. uh, there is something else called as nullable types. Okay, what are nullable types? Any idea what are nullable types? No idea. Good, let me tell you. So there are few types created, or types, predefined data types, like here int. Okay, int I equal to null. Okay, let me debug or run the code. So are you getting the error? What is the error? The error says that you cannot convert null to int because int is a non-nullable type, right? Making sense? However, in reality, what happens, your database, some of the databases like your Oracle or DB2, they accept null values in the fields, and even SQL Server does that. And think that there is a field of integer type and there is a null value saved in it in the database, and you are trying to get it from the database and assign the value using your data access code to a integer type variable. Okay, it throws a error. It throws a error. And how, due to that reason, many times earlier it used to happen that before your .NET 4.0, we used to explicitly check whether it is null or not, and we used to pass it. And some other thing used to happen that by default, if the value is null in your database, when you get it and when you assign it to your integer type or numeric type variables, it used to get converted to 0 automatically. Fine. And think of a scenario where there is a null type and it got converted into 0 and it got assigned to a numeric value and you displayed it on the screen. There might be a confusion whether it is 0 or null exactly, right? Because 0 is a value, right? Yes or no? Due to that reason, with .NET 4.0, they have introduced something called as nullable types, by which you can say that you can add a question mark next to your int declaration, which makes it nullable. Fine. Now it doesn't throw a compilation error. It gets successfully built. 1 second. So these types are called as nullable types. Okay, how will you create a nullable types? There are multiple types, non-nullable types existing earlier, like your int, double, long, etc. All of them, they can be converted into nullable types by adding a question mark before the type declaration, right? Understood? And the next concept which we have to discuss is your partial classes. Do you have any understanding of a partial class? It has been existing in Java also. If some of you knew what is a partial class in Java also, it's fine to explain. If you say no, yes, yes, say yes. If you don't know, say no. Good. So think of a scenario in real time, uh, which uh, which is like this. Okay, think that there are 4 developers in my team and there is one class called as employee class, which which spans across multiple modules in your code. And by that I mean to say there are multiple developers who should be working on the same class, and all of them, they are creating a project from the scratch, so they'll have to start working on all of them. So they'll have to start working on the class at the same time, and the class doesn't exist, right? So they'll have to create it and start working on it. So earlier it used to happen that you will create it, and before building or compiling the code, or before pushing the code to the server, you'll have to integrate all the changes created by all the developers and put them together into one class and ensure that code gets compiled and we should push it to the server, right? However, it used to be a tedious task because every time again you'll have to make a change, you'll have to get the latest file, and you'll have to make changes on top of it, integrate the changes and push it. Fine, it looks cumbersome. Got it? So with .NET 3.5, they have introduced a type of class called as partial class. Okay, what happens? So all of them, they can create the classes as partial classes so that the class exists in more than one file. However, during the compile time, all the partial classes with the same name would get compiled together into a single class. Making sense? Like I have a collections class. I am working on this, and fine, and part of it is existing here, and I'm creating another part of it in some other file. Okay, like my exception handling file, I'm creating it in some other file. Fine, and I'm adding another method, public mm, uh, 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 void partial 2 of int a comma int a, and what I'll do here, simply write find console dot write line, or console dot write of some method. Okay, and here collections is some other class. Here there are add elements and print methods. Okay, now in my program.cs, if I start creating a object of collections type obj equal to new collections, you'll see that it is integrated using both of them. Obj dot, you'll see the partial to method and print methods, both of them together in the object, right? So during the compile time, they get integrated into one class. However, they are partial classes so that they can exist on more than one file. Making sense? Understood? What is the purpose of doing so? More than one person can work on the same class. That's the benefit of your partial class. Good. So with that, we have completed all the topics related to your C sharp. There are few topics which are left, like your lambda expressions and link you. Okay. However, this is not the right time to do them because there are some dependent concepts in your ASP.NET which should be completed so that these advanced topics can be taken up. Okay, so what our roadmap is like this. From Monday we will be starting something called as ASP.NET, and ASP.NET is the web-based technology associated with your .NET, and we'll be starting with understanding the prerequisites of your ASP.NET, and after that we'll start with something called as page lifecycle, and we'll do state management, and we'll do something called as understanding basic controls, advanced controls, data controls, and once that is done, we'll do some sample programs, and once that is done, we'll move on to something called as code reusability, where we'll understand master pages, custom controls, and user controls, and after that we'll move on to the data access part of ASP.NET, where we'll be understanding ADO.NET, what are the different components associated with your ADO.NET, and how to extract the data from your database using the ADO.NET. And once that is done, again we'll come back to the advanced concepts of your C sharp, which are related to ASP.NET as well, like your link queue and lambda expressions. We'll start with lambda expressions. We'll understand how lambda expressions are different from your anonymous methods, and after that we'll start understanding how the lambda expressions are enhanced or extended into your link queue, and we'll understand how link queue is different from ADO.NET, or how it makes things better. And after that we'll move on to entity framework, and with that we'll be closing our ASP.NET, and we'll be moving to something called as web services and MVC, etc., etc. Fine, making sense? That's the roadmap. And before getting started with ASP.NET, I'll expect something from all of you. Okay, what is that? Go through this tutorial called as tutorial W3 schools. Okay, you need not go through everything in it, but you need to know the basics of HTML actually. Okay, you start with basic HTML elements, attributes, headings, paragraphs, styles. That's it. Okay, till this point. Okay, because the HTML is the basis for all the web-based technologies. Okay, whether it is .NET or ASP or classic ASP or ASP.NET or JSP, whatever. Okay, so start understanding till this point, and next weekend you'll have to go through something called as SQL Server. Whatever, wherever you feel comfortable, I expect you to get the basic knowledge of HTML, so that you'll not feel that things are very much fresh when we start understanding the markup associated with ASP.NET. Fine, wherever you feel is clear, you can go through it. Fine, just the basics. You need not get into details. Making sense? Good. Thanks so much. And as I said, we have a uh, mm, assessment on object-oriented programming. However, this guy Vishwa left the class. So fine, we'll do it on Monday. On Monday, we'll be having a assessment on object-oriented programming for 5 to 10 minutes after the class.